Now, lately, I've been doing quite a few videos on the MRM, and I think this is an important thing to point out. The MRM has been a failure for 50 years. And primarily, I'm going to coin this term olive branchers. Uh, the MRM is filled with olive branchers. And this gentleman here, Mark Postgate, is a perfect example. 50 years ago, the MRM were always holding up the olive branch and having it slapped out of their hands. And that's why the gender war or war between the sexes don't exist. It's just men getting curb stomped by the opposite sex. And this is the kind of thing you got to drum out of it. Now let's hear just a little bit from Mark, and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Now imagine you're a single mother.
Oh, sorry. I need to give you some context. He's talking about child support, the man being divorced and being forced to pay child support or an alimony.
And you know the only way that you can keep your head above water financially is to make your ex-husband suffer. It's the only way you can make ends meet, is to inflict suffering upon your ex-husband. That would only lead you to dehumanizing. You would have to deal with the cognitive dissonance. Imagine if you're an absent father. Some of you may not need to imagine this, you may know exactly what it's like. But imagine you're an absent father, and you know the reason that you're struggling is because the money you need to live on is going to your ex-wife. Well, that can only produce resentment. It's essential to the welfare of our children that separated partners are able to be friends.
Now, see what Mark is doing here. He's trying to take the blame off the average woman who's doing this to her husband and putting it on the system. I see this a lot too. Everyone's blaming the system. The system is it the way it is because the women want it that way. That woman doesn't have to go to her husband and drain out of him. She can go to welfare. She can go to the government. The government gives to women all the time. So any woman who's draining her husband dry with child support is doing it because she wants to do it to him. And of course, Mark Postgate he's a perfect example of those MRAs who, of course, want to extend the olive branch. I know you're not doing this to me because you don't like me, like so many women do in divorce, or that you hate me. It's because, there's this system that's making you do it. Now, this is something, his videos are older, but they're not that old. This is only 4 years old. This is something men should have realized the first 10 years of experience with the MRM. There's another example. This is a much older video, I can tell, but this is from Angry Harry, a guy who was involved with men's rights. And listen to what he has to say.
Men try to speak out, or articles are written that in some way oppose the feminist agenda, women's groups, women's lobby groups, will stir up in their gullible female supporters hysteria, and they will claim and they will argue that the
before Angry Harry goes any further, listen to him. Listen how gullible he is. He's trying to put it on a particular group of women, these women's rights movement, stirring up gullible women. Women only believe this because they want to. You think the average woman who has dealt with her brothers and father and her husband for decades really just needs to hear like a woman come up to her and say, you've been screwed over your whole life? Well, not because she's gullible. She will do it. It's because she likes the message. Her husband, her father, her brothers, her sons are for sale. The average woman is like this. And so Angry Harry here, he's holding out the olive branch. He's saying, oh, the average woman, please, please, don't you see? We don't want to blame you. We're blaming these others, and you've just been fooled. You just don't realize it. If women were just fooled 20 years ago, if not longer, men would just go to women and say, hey, you're fooled. Here's the evidence. And it would have ended. Not just 20 years ago, it would have ended 50 years ago. At the very least 40 after 10 years of experience. But of course, that hasn't happened, has it? Because women weren't fooled. They look at this and say, you know, I love this victimhood culture because it benefits me, and it fits me at the expense of the opposite sex. And I'm fine with that because I have contempt for the opposite sex. Trust me, women in my family would do it to me in a heartbeat. So, I mean, these guys aren't just olive branchers, they're beggars. It's continual begging to women to be nice to them. This is the uselessness of the MRM. It's not a rights movement. They don't care about men's rights. They care about women being nice to them. Angry Harry here basically wants validation from women. And so he's willing to sell out.
Attacks that are made on the feminist movement and on the female point of view create a climate of fear amongst the vulnerable females in the community, and therefore they should not be articulated at all.
The problem is that they still think.
Yeah, I should have let that go, lawyers. But there's whatever else these guys have to say. I mean, yes, Angry Harry is talking about, what can I say? He's accurate in the strategy they use, but he undermines his own talking points once he starts begging, once he starts olive branching. This is a stripping of men's rights that has been going on for at least 50 years. And it's happened because men like this, like Angry Harry, and Mark Postgate, they're the front lines. And all they can do is beg and not have the courage to blame women. The average woman is to blame. She is. If women cared about men, there'd be counter protest to feminists by average women. The only time I see it is when an individual woman suffers. When she still likes her husband and she finds him a good provider, and all of a sudden he gets hashtagged, and all of a sudden he can't provide for her. Sorry, I see the true way women view men and their actions. I go by people's actions. So, I mean, Angry Harry here is just useless in the end. I mean, take Mark Postgate again. You know, all his videos, his earliest videos are already 4 years old. I mean, sorry for screwing that up. And look, he only has like not even 500 views, a few comments. He has less than 100 subscribers. This kind of talk, this kind of he has a video called Loving Your Enemies. I mean, sorry, what a bunch of laydowns. In the meantime, I'm glad this popped up my view. Look what gets 2.1 million views. Jordan Peterson, The Collapse of Our Values. You know why he's popular? Because most guys are like Mark Postgate here. They're beggars and they're olive branchers. They want women to be nice to them. Men generally do not care about their rights. They come to women and tell them, I'm willing to sell out all my rights for you. Just be with me and validate me. There's all kinds of songs written. I've climbed the highest mountains for you. Men are willing to sacrifice just to have women around. They demand nothing from the opposite sex. So the MRM being filled with men do the same. They demand nothing. I'm going to show you or tell you the strategy appropriate MRM would do. This is a video I did much earlier, feminist protest to demonize and smear on men. This is the one where in UK, a woman was murdered by a man, and these feminists were using it as a shoehorn to try and bring on a 6 o'clock curfew for men. These women went to the streets. Now, an active MRM would have men, foot soldiers on the ground with signs countering this. There should, even if it isn't a giant group, there should be at least a small group of men out in the streets with signs saying we're human too, and we're not putting up with these scumbags. And they should be calling these women's name, not being nice to them and polite to them, saying what they are. These women are scumbags who are trying to take my rights away. That would be an MRM doing the right thing. And believe it or not, when I say this strategy, which is strategy 101 by anyone, by any movement, I'll get pushed back by guys saying, well, that would never work because society isn't ready for it. Then my answer to that is break up the MRM. You're not willing to do anything. And the simple fact is, if you had guys in these women's faces, you couldn't, the camera couldn't avoid it. They would have to see it. And it would be making a stand. You wouldn't be an olive brancher then. But I suspect so many of the MRAs would run up and probably beg this woman and say, I'm a nice guy. Hey, you're really pretty. Would you like to be my girlfriend? Sorry, the MRM is, I have to say, a litmus test for the actions of the average guy. Because even if you didn't have an official MRM, there should have been at least ordinary guys in the street, guys who aren't officially MRM out there shouting, hey, I'm a human being. I don't deserve this. So it's just a good litmus test for the male psyche. To be a man is to be a coward. To be a man is to be a lay down. To be submissive, not aggressive, submissive. Testosterone makes man submissive. A little boy, prepubescent, would stand up for himself and say, this isn't fair. You're not to do this to me. And you can't do this to my friend because he's a little boy just like me. But men, what a bunch of cutthroat losers. What a bunch of crabs in the bucket. Anyway, this is what I have to say. And I think that's all as far as I need to go. But for me to say this is me kicking you in the ass. You, the average guy listening to this, I'm kicking you in the ass. There's nothing to gain from these girls, nothing, zero. These women dumped you in the 1960s. As soon as the nuclear age made things safe and easy and they could get their own jobs and easy jobs too, and clean jobs and job security, they dumped you guys. So there's nothing to gain by being nice to them. Now, one last thing. I know it's a good strategy not to have guys ranting about the opposite sex in the MRM because unlike the women's movement, the women's movements can have women saying we want to cut men to pieces. And society's all right with that. I know it's unfair, But to tone police guys when they're just talking to each other privately, that shows you're not serious. Because guys have absolute rights to say women are scumbags when they do this. This is the average woman doing this to the average guy. These are these women who love you. Who are you? This woman, do you think she's just comes from a family of women, all women? You think she has no uncles or brothers or fathers? Or a father, I should say? Or none of these women have sons? These women spit on their own loved ones. So who are you to be tone policed? Okay, that's the end of this.